So the question says, since we know that God is love and He is good, according to the scriptures, why won't He cause mankind to always love and do good like He is? So if I'm to paraphrase this, it means since God is love and God is good, why won't He force us, that's the whole of mankind, to love and do good just like Him? I dare to say that love is the supreme requirement of every Christian or disciple. But you can't understand the concept of love if you are not operating under the freedom of the will. In other words, you choose to love. So if you are being compelled by some machine, then you do not have the ability to love. The machine may enable you to comply, but you will never be in a position to express independently the sentiment and the reality of love. God's supreme goal has not changed, and that is for us to love Him with all our hearts, with all our souls, and with all our minds, and also that we love our neighbors as ourselves. Oh yes, God will not violate your free will, because it is a necessary component in man as designed by God, so that His ultimate agenda can be expressed. Yes, Philippians 2:13 says it is God that works in you to will and to do of His good pleasure. But what preceded that statement in verse 12 is that you should work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. Your decision to work it out is what aligns with the workings of God in you. That God should force the will of man into a particular direction is an altercation with humanity by His own design. And that you think that God should always stop your hand from pulling the trigger or holding you back from running into a moving truck is as good as asking for the greatest form of denial. Yes, as beautiful as it may sound to say God has saved you from some self-destructive measure, can He as well stop you from making the decision of putting those dreads on, or stopping you from deciding on the names you want for your newborn, or hinder you from wanting to drive a Bentley like you desire? No, He's not going to toil with your will. That is asking for a denial to choose to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. God sent His Son to die for the sin of mankind, but Jesus chose to die for you and I. So when you have love as the ultimate standard of a Christian, with your own will and freedom to choose aligning with God's will, then every other contingency, situations, issues of life become fragments that eventually come together to work for your good and ultimately for the glory of God. But then if you're asking for some mechanical process to force man to always comply and obey God without you having that freedom to think and make decisions, then even your question itself will self-destruct, because you are asking that question due to the ability that you can reason and for the fact that you have the freedom to ask in the first place. Yes, many times we go through situations that look like our world is crashing down before our very faces, just for you to realize afterwards that those issues were specifically crafted bridges that led you to the zenith of unimaginable potentials while you were at the center of God's will. You see, the wisdom of man is infinitesimally small when compared with the wisdom of God. For instance, God doesn't live within time and space. His ways are unsearchable. Eternity past, eternity to come, all those things are in His hands. But for you and I, we do not know what tomorrow holds. We have no clue. Right here, we do not know who is going to be relevant tomorrow. We don't know who is going to be bigger. We don't know who is going to be smaller. We don't know who is going to be richer. We don't know who is going to be poorer. We don't know anything. We have no clue. We don't know who is going to be the most needed. As a matter of fact, we don't know who is going to be alive. Oh yes. Did you know when you were born? So how are you supposed to know when you will return? Our lives and times are in His hands. So why don't we wait till we see Him face to face, when we now have the full knowledge of Him, realizing that all things, both the good and the bad, are important pieces in the puzzle that reveals God's wisdom and glory, in which we are all natural beneficiaries as sons. And you dare not forget Romans 8:18, for the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that shall be revealed in us. And yes, get used to it, because the enemy will always try to destroy us. It won't stop. And he will do this at times when we are most vulnerable. 1 Peter 5:8 explains how he goes about like a lion, seeking whom to devour. That's why our weakest moment is that point in which we need to know that God is required. We need to allow Him show up in His miraculous power. Yes, it could look like God sits up there folding His arms while He's watching us going through pains. That perception of God, is it really true? Yeah, can the Father watch His Son going through pains and not feel hurt too? Is He really unmoved by our infirmities? Our role in these times is not to be strong, but to be strong in the Lord. In ourselves, we are weak, but we should pay attention and see what God is going to reveal, while His strength is what operates in us. And so I say, be strong in the Lord and in the power of His might, for all things will work together for the good of them that love God and are called according to His purpose.